Backlit photos, not gonna be a problem anymore. Howdy everyone, in this video we're gonna cover how we can save photos that have a really strong source of backlighting, like the sun. All right, we already have our portrait here ready to go, and it's a perfect example of a backlit photo. So let's see what we can get out of it and how we can save it. Now, before we get to exposure, let's take a look at our camera and lens. Now we'll find our lens profile in the list, and as you can see, it's already nicely corrected our barrel distortion. Now I still want to straighten the lines because the railing that the model is leaning on looks a bit crooked. So I'm going to choose Smart and move the bottom line just a little bit more. All right, I think that looks a lot better, but I still want to crop the photo just to remove this black frame right here. Okay, and now we're ready for exposure. The key is balancing the composition right from the beginning, and that is so that we eliminate blowouts in the background. Now you can show blowouts by using the shortcut Shift and the O key, or click this little sun icon right here. All right, let's use the sliders under dynamic range to get rid of our blowouts, and especially when it comes to the lights, which affects the highlights in our photos. Now, if you have blowouts or overexposed areas just like we do, lower lights and don't be afraid to go all the way down. We'll bring the highlights back into our photo later on. Now you might notice that we're already getting a bit of the sky color back. The histogram has also flattened out a bit and our blowouts are pretty much gone. So now it's gonna be a good idea to brighten up the shadows that are covering our model. Now, a backlit subject is always gonna be a lot more darker than we ideally would like, and that covers anything from models, subjects, pets, cars, architecture, and so forth. Now, just like you do with lights, don't be afraid to go to the extreme regarding shadows. We reveal what's hidden in the photo and then fine tune it in the exposure later. Now, the photo is unfortunately a bit dull now and lacks contrast. And there are quite a few bright areas in this photo, as you can see in the histogram. But by increasing shadows, all the black has pretty much disappeared, and you can use the black point slider to bring it back, but just be a bit careful when doing that. Now the subject is still a bit darker than we'd like, and this is, again, a common issue that we experience with backlit photos. Now be careful not to overdo the background adjustments at the cost of brightening up our subject. And also don't do these in the kind of global settings, but instead after our basic adjustments, go to your local adjustments and edit the subject there. It's gonna turn out much better. For example, I'd like to brighten the model even more, but as you can see, our shadow slider is at its end and we can't move it anymore. And we also don't want to affect the background. So let's use a filter brush and select the entire model. And also be sure to rename the mask. If I wanted to adjust the background separately, I would duplicate and invert this mask and rename it once again. So as a general rule and something that you should keep in mind always, whether you're working with masks in the develop or editor module, it doesn't matter. Just be sure to rename them so that you don't end up changing a mask that you didn't want to change and now it's changed and it sucks. Let's move on. Now, once I have both masks ready, I can move on to adjusting the exposure locally. Now I want to brighten the model, so let's increase the shadows once again and decrease black point to bring some black back into the photo. I'm going to slightly increase the white point to bring out the white in her face as well as your clothing. Then let's decrease the shadows, but only a little bit. So when doing these types of adjustments, be careful not to make too much of a noticeable difference in exposure at the edges of the masks, because the result is not gonna look good. Okay, and one more thing, let's adjust temperature for the background just to a slightly warmer tone, and my local adjustments are complete. Now, if you wanna learn more about using tools for local adjustments, there's a link here, but you'll also find it in the video description. Okay, finally, let's increase texture for the entire photo just to emphasize the facial features and slightly increase vibrance. And here's what the photo looked like before we did anything and how it looks now after our touch-up. I think it looks pretty good. What do you guys think? And these are just some of the ways that you can get some life back into photos that have a strong source of backlighting and you don't see the subject at all. So I hope it was useful. Give us a thumbs up or let us know what you think below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.